Welcome to the Empowered Dancers podcast, where we talk openly about all things empowerment in the salsa, bachata and kizomba scene. Join me as I talk about the highs and lows of Latin dancing, as well as interviewing some incredible people on their stories, experiences and points of view, both in the dance scene and beyond. Go to empowereddancers.com/5 ways for 5 tips to boost your confidence on the social dance floor. I'm Bobbie Miles, that's Bobbie with an IE and Miles as in distance. Joining me today, I have Vanessa Bright. Vanessa is a life coach and musician and singer. She's a very creative individual, and that extends to dance. Vanessa has been a bachata dancer on and off for the last several years, and we met at a bachata choreo lesson series, and I am very happy to welcome Vanessa to join us today. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you, Bobbie. Thanks for having me on your show.
Brilliant to have you here. And so you've been dancing bachata. You've been dipping in and out of the scene for several years now.
Yeah, so I actually started, and it's not been continuous. And my friends within the dance community know this because they're like, "Oh, I haven't seen you for a while." When I turn up to a class, I started actually in 2008, and it's quite interesting how I started. I didn't really like salsa music and bachata when I first heard it, and I think it was like sort of a conditioning from friends that I was with at the time that that music's like, it's a showy offy type of music and that's all it's for, and the dancing as well to go with it is more for like, they're just showing off,
Gosh, it's interesting how other people's mindsets and opinions can really permeate into our own way of thinking.
Yeah, totally. But it was a friend of mine in Reading who was really into salsa, and she took me once to a salsa club. It's no longer there in Reading, but back in the days in like 2008. And it just, the music just started to grow on me. And I was like, this is quite cool. And then she dragged me up onto the dance floor. And then the people that she knew, because she'd been doing lessons and she knew the instructors in Reading, etc. And so it was just on the dance floor that I met friends of hers that go to classes, and they were teaching me a little bit of basic salsa and bachata.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is quite cool, actually. I think I might give this a go, And I started to enjoy the music as well. It started to grow on me a bit more. And the next thing I know was like, I actually for a while was just learning on the dance floor, not taking lessons.
Yeah.
And I found that I could pick up quite easily because my origins are from Mauritius. And we have dancing there, which is very much based, it's called Sega dancing, and it's very much based on the hip movements. So it's sort of, we're like born with that, or we kind of learn that through the dance community within like Mauritian parties and, communities, etc.
That's very
so that I sort of had the natural hip movement there, but everything else, it was like, just slowly. It's amazing what you pick up subconsciously just through listening to people. Like your brain's like a sponge, isn't it? You just soak up the environment, you soak up the information, and before I knew it, I was like, this is really good. I want to start doing lessons, but I was already past the beginner stage at that point, just through learning on the dance floor. But I always think lessons are important because it just brings that finesse to the dancing.
I totally agree.
And
I'm never done with lessons.
And it's the same with music as well. Like, learning instruments. Like for me, I've learned enough in instruments to create music, but to get to a good level, I would need lessons in piano and guitar and etc. So the same applies to dance. And and I actually got heavily involved in the dance community in Reading because that's where I was working at the time.
Nice.
And I was there for 14 years, so I became very involved with the salsa community in particular. And then I went to live in Spain for a little while.
Amazing.
And then had the experience of the dance community over there in Valencia.
I was going to ask where did you go to?
Yeah.
My brother's just moved to Valencia, and I'm already thinking when I visit, what's the dancing going to be like?
Wow. Oh, yeah. Well, I was there quite a while ago now. It was 2010. Yeah. But it was, I found like I went to one class and I did like, sort of social dancing. And I wasn't in Valencia for that long, actually, just because I realised that I was there actually teaching English because I took a career break in IT back then.
Nice.
So I always like to try new things, and then I realised that's not for me. Teaching English, it wasn't really for me
Yeah,
in
fair
the
enough.
end. But with the dancing, yeah, I found that the class I went to was quite high standard actually. I
That's
don't know if that's across Spain, if that's the case or not, because I've not been dancing in enough cities in Spain to know that. But
yeah,
I found like I had to up my game
that's
there.
cool.
But I think that's probably to do with there's quite a large Latin American community there in Valencia as well
Yeah,
as Spanish, and so yeah, there's a lot of what I liked was the natural ways of dancing.
yeah, because the way we learn here is very prescriptive. We learn moves and
Yeah,
combinations, and then we have to learn that flow and naturalness later on. Whereas those who've grown up with
100%.
it do it the other way around.
100%. And for me, it's very much related to like Strictly Come Dancing styles where, people say, do you watch Strictly? And I'm like, I actually personally prefer the dancing that's more natural and that's done, say, in the streets of Cuba or, or like the Kizomba in Angola. It's like when you see, for me, the best videos is when like they're dancing in the streets and it's more natural and there's more flow. So I
Yeah,
prefer the more natural moves. And I think that, for me, there's a lot more connection when there's
yeah,
flow in that sense, and it's
yeah,
more heart based rather than I'm thinking so much of what I've got to do next, and that
yeah,
takes the enjoyment out of it. So yeah,
yeah,
flow, as you said, so important.
very much agree. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never really gotten into Strictly, but I can sit during a social and watch and really enjoy myself. People
Oh
just
yeah.
dancing as
Yes.
they feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah.
So, Vanessa, you've been in and out of the scene. So you were in it for quite a while in Reading. What made you take a step back?
So I think this is probably the next topic we'll come on to. It's for me, it's about, as a life coach, I'll start with that. I'm very much an advocate of safe spaces, right? So as a life coach, I create a safe space. And what that means is a space to support the person that has come to me with, whichever challenge they come to me with. Now, within the dance community, I've found that there needs to be more or action taken to create a safer space.
Mm-hmm.
And just to explain to the audience, safe spaces, it's not necessarily just about, going on the dance floor and then somebody perhaps putting their hand in a place they shouldn't be putting it in, or it being more of a physical, like visible thing. It goes beyond that, a safe space. And I think a lot of it is the responsibility of the instructor of the class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm very surprised about is, as an instructor, I mean, I'm not 100% sure what the steps instructors go to become instructors, but I'm pretty sure that there isn't enough kind of auditing and vetting going on with
As far
that at the
as,
moment.
yeah, as far as I know, in the UK, there is none.
Right.
People just kind
Okay.
of decide they're going to be teachers. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so that's in the UK setting, that's as much as I know. Some people do come into it from a teaching background, like school teaching or something. That's their
Right.
main job and they side teach. But it's very much, if you want to teach, you start teaching, and a lot of people do. Yeah,
That's quite surprising for me because, like you just mentioned, being a teacher,
yeah,
the due diligence and checks and the protocols that you have to adhere to and go through is paramount, isn't it?
yeah,
It's important that for the safety of not just children, because you can teach adults. I taught both children and adults when I was in Valencia, for example.
yeah,
I had to go through checks, not just DBS, but also I was audited
yeah,
as well. So I'd have someone come in the classroom unexpectedly
yeah.
when I was in Valencia, which I feel, yeah, some instructors might be uncomfortable with that. But should they really be? Because, if they are doing things correctly and they are creating safe spaces, and they've got nothing to worry about if someone
Yeah.
comes in and checks what
And
they're
then the
doing. And
opposite
it's,
side, yeah, if they come in and they
yeah,
can spot something that's not acceptable, not up to standard, that's a good thing, surely. They can come in and say, hey,
yeah,
this was great, that was great. I noticed this. This is what I'm not too happy with. How could we fix it? Or here's this way you could improve it. That's got to be a good thing.
yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
So
And
that auditing idea sounds great that it happens in
yeah,
Spain. I'd like to see that happen here. That would be cool.
yes, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it was that specific school because it was an academy that I was in. So it was a private school. So I'm not sure if that applies across, but I would advocate that, like having someone like a governing body to oversee these checks and get people in to just have a look and, more objectively, because I think within the dance community at the moment, you have the camaraderie in it. And so therefore, I think being objective and being a third party takes that away from it of having to be a certain way. You're just looking and observing, is this a safe space? And, is the instructor doing what they're meant to be doing?
Yes.
And I found in my experience, like I've probably only met 2 instructors where I feel that they've got enough self-awareness, right? Because I think that's the start is, if you're self-aware as an instructor, you're going to be more aware of what's happening in your classroom.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that peripheral vision. Even though you're teaching, you could kind of sense, almost on an energetic level sometimes, that something is a bit off. And I feel that's lacking massively.
Yeah.
And the more, obviously, I've been a life coach for 10 years, so I've had to develop my own self-awareness. But the more now I go into a lesson or like a social, I'm seeing that instructors might be very competent in what they're doing, but they're missing something major happening, say, in the corner, whereby, it's happened to me recently in a kazomba class, actually, where there was one person who he'd use words like, you're doing this wrong or you're doing that wrong. And I actually wasn't. I mean, I'd hold my hand up if I'm doing things wrong. And for those in the dance community who've danced with me and know me, I tend to even apologise probably more often than I should, but in
That's
this
a common
case,
problem, isn't it? Over apologising.
Yeah, it is. It's saying sorry. Well, yeah, women in particular, saying sorry for things that really shouldn't be saying sorry for. It's just, perhaps sometimes it's the way in which the leads are leading.
Yeah.
And there can be quite a bit of ego in that. And I think because you're never going to eliminate that behaviour, but I think it's a responsibility of the instructor to keep an eye on what's happening.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I find can be difficult is, like, because instructors sometimes say, well, if there's a problem, come to me, but they're not safe enough to approach. So I've been to a class, it was quite a while ago, salsa class in Bristol. And I noticed that, I mean, it's actually quite shocking in hindsight what I saw, but the instructor was actually picking on a lead in his class who was not very confident. I don't think he was actually doing things that wrong in terms of the way he was leading.
Okay.
But it was just like this instructor every 5 minutes would pick on him. And the guy was a smaller frame and the instructor's quite a big frame, actually, and taller. And I felt like this was actually like an egoic thing, like he was trying to feel more empowered. That's not the way to be empowered, but that's, how he was trying to kind of boost his own masculinity by picking on someone. But that sort of attitude filtered throughout the group.
I was just thinking that's how it's going to be. If the teacher behaves in a certain way, just like anything, someone comes into a new activity, the teacher behaves in a certain way, you take that as the standard.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether you're aware of it or not, people do assimilate that persona a little bit. Yeah.
Definitely. It gives permission to people because there's a lack of boundaries there. It gives permission to people who have those traits of perhaps being a bit more aggressive than usual to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a result of that, what happened was, because I observed it and I didn't feel safe enough to actually step in and to the instructor and say, hang on a minute, I'm not actually happy with the way you're conducting this class.
Yeah.
So I just stayed a bit longer just to observe. And then when it actually came to the point where I was dancing with one of his friends, he was a lead, he was a pupil, a student in the class.
Yeah.
And he got a little bit aggressive with me and saying again, and usually it's the lines like, you're doing this wrong. And you're not. You know you're not doing it wrong, not because of
Feedback
my
in classes, guys.
ego or anything.
Yeah.
I'm happy to learn. I'm happy to be put right if I'm not doing a step right. I don't mind that because that's going to boost my learning. But this person I actually started to feel tense as a result. And then he said, relax, and shouted at me. And and I just thought, you know what? Like, I think if I was in my 20s, where I was perhaps a lot more naive, I would have apologized even to that person, even though they were, I knew I wasn't in the wrong here.
Yeah.
But in this case, I literally just said, actually, no. And I walked off and I walked out of the class. I grabbed my things and I was out.
It's
And I
like,
was
that's
like, I
it, I'm
don't have
done.
time for this.
No,
I
you're
don't
not
have
there to be
time.
made to feel small.
Yeah,
No, not
yeah,
at all.
exactly. And I noticed that was sort of the ambience of that of the class was like I said, the smaller framed guy who was leading,
Yeah.
he was picked on, and then consequently it was me next. And I thought, okay, I see what's going on here.
Not having that.
And if that happens now, if I go to a class, I will literally walk out if that behavior happens. If the
That's quite brave
instructor's
to
not
do.
picking that up and I've picked it up just by walking into the class, then I feel like, why aren't they? And why are they avoiding it? Is it that they don't want to have any confrontation? They're worried about losing, um, people coming to their class. But who actually would want someone like that to come into the class?
Of
I think there
course.
needs to be boundaries set. And if the follower or whoever's in the class or the lead does not accept those boundaries and they just keep, crossing them, then they need to be told to leave,
Oh, 100%.
actually.
Yeah, they do. Well, they do.
Yeah,
I mean, if you wanted to have a strict system of take them to the side, hey, I've noticed this kind of behavior that's not okay here. Here are the kind of things that we promote here and that we want to see from everyone. And then if you want to give that extra chance, fine. Perhaps it will be a you're out, don't come back. Perhaps it will be a come back in 2 weeks, but think about these things for that time, please, or
yeah,
something to have
definitely
a system
agreed.
in place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I just don't think that's happening enough from what I've seen,
no,
actually.
I agree. Yeah,
So I don't
and
know how they're going to take that forward. If the instructors are not aware of what they're doing, what's it going to take for them to be aware?
this is what's difficult.
um,
Hopefully, conversations
yeah,
like this
yes, yeah. Hopefully they'll be watching this podcast, and some of them will recognise me. Just
from their class,
from some of the
perhaps.
classes
Yeah,
I've been to, and they'll be perhaps thinking, "Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that." But
yeah,
some of the instructors I've approached with certain topics because or there's something perhaps I haven't felt comfortable with, but they'll just laugh it off and go, "Oh no, ha ha ha," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I can't really go to you with anything."
no.
So I haven't actually been dancing for a while now,
Oh,
and it's quite a sad state of affairs when you just put off by that
yeah,
because for me personally, I can get very triggered by that. I'm actually an abuse survivor. I talk about this publicly. I've gone through many forms of abuse in my life, younger
mm,
years and a bit older as well. And it makes it even harder for someone like me. And I know I'm not alone in this because I've
yeah,
spoken to many women within the dance community who've opened up. When I opened up on social media about what I'd gone through, they also opened up. And those very same people are having the courage to go to a dance class. And then they're encountered with, behavior like that,
yeah.
where
Poor
they don't have a
behavior
safe
and
space.
dismissive reactions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's hard enough for anyone to go, but when you've had that extra experience where it's been uncomfortable and your
Yeah,
boundaries have been crossed,
yeah,
it's like for me, I would think before going to a dance class, is it safe rather than can I actually do the moves correctly? It's more about
yeah,
safety.
yeah.
And so I've sort of been put off for a while, not going to any,
That's
but I
fair.
do want to get back into it again. And I'm considering even one-to-one with instructors that I feel
Yeah.
safe with, actually.
And that's that you shouldn't have to go to that additional expense unless that's you want to accelerate your learning, but you feel that you need that for safety reasons. I mean, we have in our one of our chats today, there were some girls talking about an event that's coming happening this weekend, and one of them thought, "Oh, I like the guest teacher, but I don't always feel safe in that space, actually." And then
Yeah.
another lady said, "Oh, I'm gonna go." So then it was great. I'll go, and I'm going too. Great. So then it was now we've got this little support network. Then they're like, "Great, okay,
Yes.
we'll go together. We know where we are. and we can come and find each other if we need to. And that's fantastic. I mean, it shouldn't need to be that way, but it's wonderful to see women making that space for themselves.
That's a great idea, actually.
Yeah.
I think you can start to build that network when you go regularly. Someone like myself is sort of like, I'm not going continuously just because of how busy my life can get.
Yeah.
I don't have that support right now. So I'd love to, get in touch after this podcast to discuss like how I can, create more safety and maybe more support amongst people who attend those classes before I just turn up and then
I'd enjoy that.
That would be great, and then that just give me a lot more confidence knowing that there are other people. So if an event does happen where you feel unsafe, you've got someone to talk to about it.
Yes,
at least,
because it's all well and good, as you say, teachers are telling us just come and speak to me. They're saying that just as if that's an easy thing, but actually when you've been made to feel vulnerable or small or humiliated in some way or degraded in some way, then going and telling someone who's not a close friend or anything, you don't know that much about them except they're teaching. They're not, actively engaging in these kinds of conversations that you can see. It's not just come and speak to me. It's actually very difficult to decide, okay, I'm going to go and tell someone about this or tell the important organizer or whatever it is.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I just think if those instructors themselves haven't actually done much inner work, on their own emotions and how they feel and creating safe space for their own selves, then they're not going to understand what you're talking about. So you can't really go to them. And I can't really go to any instructors right now where I am, to speak to them. Obviously, there are some I haven't met yet and perhaps I need to meet who actually provide that safe space. But I don't, right now, I'm not feeling that comfortable about going to lessons.
It's difficult, isn't it? When you've had a couple of bad experiences or challenging experiences, to then keep putting yourself out there and trying different schools, different places to dance out becomes harder and harder. But if you want to find the place you're going to enjoy, that's what you kind of need to do if you want to continue. But it's working against each other, and it's very frustrating that it happens at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite surprising this day and age with all the sort of talk about mental health and, there definitely needs to be more. Maybe they just think, well, dance community, it's just for fun and we don't need to look at, how it affects our emotions and how it impacts us. Maybe, it's like sort of that's over there, you just go and dance. But no, it's more. And also it's a very intimate space sometimes, especially with certain dance styles like kizomba or tarashina, which is, for those who don't know tarashina, it's even a closer style of kizomba dance. I find that's, there has to definitely be a safe space if you're going to be that close with someone and that intimate.
Yeah.
So I tend to sort of, at the moment, I avoid those dances now. I prefer salsa because for me, salsa, there's more of a space.
Yeah, you've got that physical space.
Yeah, there's more physical space there, and but like kizomba and styles like that can be you've got to be very close. You have chest to chest contact sometimes.
Yes,
which just think you're meeting a stranger, and you're having to be that physically intimate with them on the first go without even knowing who they are.
Yeah,
that takes a lot. This is why, like we're talking about, it's so important that instructors are keeping an eye on how that's going. Yeah.
Well, definitely. It seems that teachers or dancers reach a certain level, or they become really good at explaining things to a point where they become teachers. It kind of happens. People have asked them how things. This is an assumption. I don't know how all teachers become teachers in dancing. Let's say they kept being asked how to do things and they got really good at explaining what to do, and then they started teaching. Great, they can teach the moves, but now you're actually the spearhead for a community if you have regular lessons. So there's so much more involved in that than just teaching the dance. You have a lot more responsibility that isn't engaged with in a lot of different, I call them dance communities, but are they communities if they're just teaching dance and not talking about all the side issues, talking about the highs and lows that come with learning to dance and having those regular conversations in lesson about what is and isn't okay, when to speak up, how to speak up, all of it.
Definitely. And something crossed my mind the other day. When I knew I was coming on this podcast, I was like, um, I just think that at the beginning of every lesson that they teach, there needs to be maybe like even just spending 5 minutes to discuss boundaries in
Yeah,
the class, because I don't feel that that's really done
it's
in the
not.
classes, not to the extent that it should be. And just communicate, we're here to have fun. However, these things are not accepted within the group,
Yeah,
or please come to me. But maybe it's because, it depends on the instructor. Like I said, how aware are they of what's
yeah,
happening
of
or
what's
of
happening around
themselves?
them.
Yeah.
And some will be dismissive, as you say, and think, well, that's nothing.
Yeah. But, I think anything can be taught. So, like I said, if there's vetting in place, if there's external auditors or parties that can train all the instructors that, this is what you need to do at the beginning of every class, set boundaries, create a safe space for people,
Yeah,
and explain what the instructor would do if the boundaries are crossed as well. So,
yes,
for example, if I was an instructor, I'll say, right, okay, if you're making people feel uncomfortable. A friend of mine the other day mentioned she goes to salsa regularly, and she mentioned about sometimes the leads not looking out at the space around them. So
yeah.
they're actually, this is quite common. This has happened to me a lot as well. So they're leading you into spaces and you're bumping into people all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And
And
you're
that,
having to say sorry to
yeah,
them. And you're like, actually, it was the lead that put me there in the first
yes,
place.
yeah,
And that creates unsafety. And then you can't relax as a dancer. I think that's quite common because, again, the leads not being self-aware, not using peripheral vision.
yeah,
And to be fair, I know they've got a lot on their mind, some of them, especially if they're new, because they're thinking, how do I do the steps? But I think they need to put the safety as a priority
yeah,
before even the steps themselves. Because when a lead is doing something wrong, it really does not bother me. I don't care because I'm there
good.
for the experience. I don't care. Everyone's going to make a
We
mistake.
all mess
And
up. I mess up regularly.
yeah,
So what?
yeah. And I mess up all the time. Everyone does in a class. And it's amazing how a lot of the leads are focusing more on the fact that they're doing something wrong, and they sometimes come over apologetic. And I'm just like, really, seriously, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm following what you're doing. Even if you think you've messed up, I'm still following you in
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. Don't
Well, good.
worry
We'll make
about
it
it.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always say that to leads when they get into that state where they almost panic about it,
Yeah,
about,
and that's where they need that safe space as well. It's not just followers or women that need this safer space. It's leads as
yes.
well, so they feel they could come and speak to their instructor or a fellow classmate and go, "This is this is really getting me wound up every time this happens," or XYZ is making me nervous. What do you do in those situations? And having those conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that, yeah, the instructor needs to create that space for the leads as well, because especially as most leads are male, not
yeah,
being sexist, but it's the truth, isn't it? You go to a
yeah.
dance class and they're
Predominantly
predominantly
what was
male,
going to happen
the
anyway.
leads are, and men don't have much of a history of really talking so much to each other and saying, did I do this wrong? It's not like women will do it more. We will have a chat
Yeah,
with each other if we know each other and say, oh, maybe I didn't feel safe here, or I didn't do this right, or.
yeah,
But males are less likely to do that, and we need to encourage them to do that more often
yeah.
with the instructor. Obviously, if the
All starts from the
instructor,
top. Yeah.
yeah, it does start from the top, it
All
really
comes back
does.
to the instructor.
Yeah.
This makes me feel so lucky. So I am part of a teaching team in for salsa and bachata, and these are things that we do engage with. So we don't do a start of the lesson talk, but throughout our level 0 and level 1 and into level 2 and level 3. Gosh, so through it all, we're talking about what's okay, what's not okay. If something's not okay for you, how to sort it out. Because it's okay for followers if one thing's okay for person A, but person B doesn't like something, they can communicate with their lead and creating that space to have those conversations. And even things like dance floor etiquette, you're saying, that's built into our beginners course. And I think I'm I'm really lucky to be part of such a well thought out group of teachers and group and community space because it incorporates respect in every part. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at actually it is all just coming from a place of respect and ending with a place of respect. And it makes it so much a better time for everyone.
That sounds amazing. As you know, before we had a chat, before I came on this podcast with you,
Yeah,
I wasn't even aware that you offered this, and you said it's something called Salsify, wasn't it? Is that
yeah,
correct?
salsa and bachata
Yeah,
fire.
yeah. So that's something I'd like to try out. Now I'm made aware of it. So
Oh, I'd
it's good
love
to
to
have
have you
these
come down.
conversations, isn't it? To
Yeah.
so that we know what other options are. So that yeah, I'd like to pop along to that and see how I get on. If you know, there's as you mentioned, the safe spaces created and there's a lot more awareness around it. That puts me more at ease to know
Yeah.
that.
I'm really pleased
Mm.
because it's something that we champion it, but we champion it as part of our blah, 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 blah. Excuse me. We champion it, but it's part of our everyday language. It's not today we're going to focus on inappropriate behavior or anything like that. It's a regular part of dance floor etiquette, social etiquette, one-on-one etiquette. It's just part of how the whole school operates. So yeah, like I say, I feel very lucky to be a member of the community there.
Yeah, it's great. And I hope to see more of that actually, which means I can just pop to any class and it's there and that framework's been put in place. So maybe, you
I
know,
hope
I'm hoping to see you more get involved with that sort of, you know, perhaps
I would love that. Yeah.
your ideas being transmitted into other classes and
Yeah.
around Bristol and even beyond there
Yeah, because I'm
as
sure I'm
well.
not the only person with these ideas. Definitely not. But
Yeah, I think that there's perhaps a lot of people who are thinking it, but they won't implement it for
it's
many reasons,
difficult
right?
to
I
do.
can understand. So it's great what you're doing, Bobbie. I'm so happy that, you know, it makes me feel like more at ease to know
Oh,
that
thank
this
you.
is happening now. And now is the time really, because we've moved on a lot over the years. I remember when I first started in salsa, um, yeah, it was a lot more it's even more so unregulated when I started in
Yeah.
2008. And yeah, my boundaries are being crossed left, right, and center. You know, people putting their hands where they shouldn't be putting them.
Yeah.
And me actually thinking this is normal
Well,
because
this
it's
is
how
it.
it's been done.
If no one's telling you it's not normal, you don't know, and you
Mm,
start to think, oh, it's just I'm a bit prudy, maybe I'm not used to this Latin
yes,
dancing
that's it.
style, things like that.
Mm,
But if something doesn't feel right to you, it's not right. That's the end
yes,
of it.
agreed. Agreed.
Um,
Yeah.
but yes, yeah, it's interesting
Mm.
that these. So I do hope we're going to see more of this everywhere as the next few years go by. Some people find it a little bit too disruptive almost to have these conversations coming in. So
Yeah.
speaking
Yeah,
to
I can
different
see that.
organizers, which I've been doing quite a bit of now, some think, fantastic, this is a great idea. And some think, oh yeah, do we need that? Oh, we have a thing and we have something like this. Then I have a look at their what they offer and I'm thinking, where do you mention that? I'm not seeing it anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's almost like speaking up and equality is kind of a hush hush thing. We're not gonna if we engage with it, it means we have a problem. But
Yeah, that's it. It's
we already
identifying,
have a
but
problem.
yeah, it is a problem, and it's okay to have a problem,
Exactly.
right? It's okay.
Yeah,
Life is full of challenges, and it's okay. It's how you address it. It's not brush it under the
100%.
carpet. We're in a stage of our lives now where you know we've progressed in society since the 1900s, right?
Yes, we
and
have.
yeah, and we're at a stage now where um, I feel that we can be having these conversations, especially as people are opening up more. We are talking about more taboo subjects a lot more in society now. So, you know, to the instructors, this is a great thing. It's not to point out flaws in what they're doing, it's actually to support them.
Exactly. Goodness, no, it's not about
Mm,
pointing out flaws. Exactly.
mm,
It's about elevating the scene, making it better, safer, more fun for more people.
yes. And also that will work in their favour because more people are likely to go to their classes
Yeah.
um, if they know the space is safer and they they can get a lot more out of it. They can relax more as well without being told to relax. You know, who relaxes when you tell someone to relax?
Especially when they've got their hands on you and they're telling you relax, you think, oh my goodness, the last thing my body is going to do now is relax in this presence.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Vanessa, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, I just want to thank you, Bobbie, for setting this all up in terms of, creating a safer space for us all. It's very, very much needed in the dance community in particular. I think it's needed everywhere, actually. But as we're talking about the dance community, for something whereby, you can get very close and intimate with people, there's touch involved.
Yeah.
Boundaries are so important. So, yeah.
Massively. Yes.
I'm with you.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you. You give so much value. I think your experience as a life coach is really clear that you've got that skill very well developed in how you're explaining these different versions of self-awareness and safe spaces. So thank you so much. I think you've made that really clear for a lot of people.
Oh, thank you, Bobbie.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered Dancers podcast. If there's an aspect of the dancing you would like to hear about, or a particular teacher you would like to hear from, drop me a message and I will try to make it happen. Make sure you subscribe to get every episode as it comes out. Thank you so much for the comments and questions you are already sharing. I really, really appreciate it, and I look forward to serving you in next week's episode.